Hello, everyone, and today we're going to read Chapter 8 in Nathan Clarkson's book Good Man, entitled Authentic. A ragamuffin knows he's only a beggar at the door of God's mercy. Brennan Manning. Like a whitewashed house where the cracks in the wood are deliberately covered or a blemished stage actor with carefully placed makeup, sometimes it seems that there are two parts of me, like I am split into two separate selves, one that people see and one that very few know. The first is my outer self, the one many people know and recognize, the one I present to the world at church and social functions and share on social media. The second part is my inner self, the hidden part, the one very few people see. I have learned to skillfully conceal it behind my outer self, and within its shadows are the more broken, human, and real bits of who I am. I do this to keep safe from judgmental eyes and because it's more comfortable not having to face my broken places. I do this out of the hope that if I look good enough, maybe I will be good enough. But perhaps really I do this out of fear. The fear that if the entirety of myself, scars, warts, blemishes, and all, were on display before the world, I wouldn't be fully loved or wanted. But in this journey of chasing after my Creator, I've learned little by little that hiding and covering my true self doesn't help keep me safe at all. It keeps me from freedom. Sometimes when I feel that I am fractured, splitting into these two parts, I watch a video. It's a video of a barefoot man in ripped jeans sitting behind a church piano. He's speaking to a crowd, exposing his dark mistakes, fears, doubts, and failures. He goes on to play a song he wrote. It's a prayer to God, with deep and raw words wrapped in a delicate piano melody. The singer's prayer, his song, and his cry acknowledge both his frailty and God's presence. I feel less alone when I watch it. When the artist looks at his fragility and asks God for strength, I find I can do so also. The man in the video is Rich Mullins. Rich was a poet, prophet, and musician in the 80s and 90s. He wrote some of the most popular praise songs we still sing today, like Awesome God and Sing Your Praise to the Lord, that many associate with tidy, pristine religion. But the man behind those songs was anything but tidy and pristine. Rich was a broken human. But this wasn't something he hid. Instead, it was something he was very honest about in an effort to point to his Creator and the greatness of how God works with and loves us despite our limitations. Rich struggled with addiction, both sexual and substance, and he cursed like a sailor. He was prone to outbursts of anger, especially when music labels would ask him to write another hit, when his raw, unfiltered lyrics about his doubts and failures caused declining sales and discomfort within the Christian market. Despite being a popular musician with plenty of money coming in, he was often hopeless. He slept on friends' couches and asked his accountant to provide him with only a small allowance so he could give the rest away. Rich's concerts were often in churches filled with Bible-thumping, suit-wearing Christians. He was usually barefoot in tattered jeans, and he often upset attendees with his uncensored words. In the video, Rich speaks candidly about a time when he was in a hotel room in Europe on tour, unable to sleep, fighting the urge to watch porn on the TV. I can only imagine the discomfort the conservative audience felt as this ragamuffin was talking about the more real parts of himself, parts we all have, on a stage reserved for righteous sermons. The song he goes on to play is called Hold Me, Jesus, and it reveals that Rich deeply recognized his need for God. Rich wrote, sang, and lived in a way that I want to live, authentically, hiding nothing, and barring all in the hopes that, through honesty and childlike dependence on God, he would find what he was looking for, what we are all looking for. He lived this way until the day he tragically died in a car accident on his way to a concert. Rich called himself a ragamuffin not because he hated who he was, but because authenticity was more important to him than presenting a polished facade, and he knew it was the only way he could stand honest before God. That authenticity has gone on to inspire many people to connect all their human pieces and integrate their real selves into the whole but fractured person God made them. Not hiding who they are, but striving to be transparent about the human experience. Authenticity, like riches, is scary, but I think perhaps it leads to freedom. I see that freedom enriches life, and it's something I crave too. Authenticity is a buzzword we often hear, sometimes from the lips of popular internet influencers and sometimes on fast food ads. But authenticity, at its core, is the unhidden and blatant truth of something, or more specifically, someone. Authenticity is a human desire, something we all crave in our lives, perhaps now more than ever because there's seemingly so little of it left. We are confronted with a new cultural norm where photoshopped photos, perfected manicured social media feeds, and slick advertising are typical, creating an unattainable standard of perfection. It leaves many of us feeling like we have to hide the less than post-worthy parts of ourselves. And it's easy to hide those parts of ourselves now. It's simple and far more comfortable for me to share only photos displaying my best angles. And while I do have good angles, both inside and out, like everyone else, I also have less than flattering angles. As we begin to hide those parts of ourselves, it becomes easier to believe they don't exist in one another, and that we're the only ones who are concealing something. But then we come across someone like Rich, a beautiful and talented man who also had deeply broken and human places, both of which he showed. He didn't fear what others thought. He stood in freedom before the world and God. Hiding is natural, and I'm certainly not saying we ought to show and expose all of ourselves, physically or emotionally, to everyone. There is wisdom in knowing what to keep sacred and safely away from those we cannot trust with our whole selves. But we must have someone in our lives with whom we are free to be completely honest about the whole of who we are. Maybe that's a family member, a counselor, or a friend, but until we are fully known, we won't believe it's possible to be fully loved, and this will affect our relationship with God and others. There's another guy I admire, someone on social media who I want to be. His feed is filled with perfectly posed images of his meaningful life and beautiful wife and kids. He's a successful author and speaker who gets tens of thousands of likes and endless comments about how wonderful he is. He's invited to speak at all cool places, and he hangs out with the cool people. He's fit, successful, and popular, and he even owns a Pinterest-worthy home. And every time I scroll by his photo or click on his profile, I am filled with a depressing realization of what I don't have and what I am not. I want what he has. I don't have the perfect relationship and family I thought I was guaranteed by now. Instead, I have a past of heartbreak. I don't own a chic home. Instead, I travel many months of the year living on friends' couches or in a tidy studio apartment in old buildings with barely enough room to stand up. I don't have the picture-perfect body I want. Instead, I have struggled with my weight. I often avoid the mirror because it seems to point out all the flaws of my imperfect shell. I am not a spiritual leader or picture of morality. More often than not, I find that my times with God are filled with confessions of things I should have conquered years ago, or frustration about the circumstances He has given me. I have never been a New York Times bestseller author, and I don't get invited to speak at many cool events with cool people. I watch a lot of Netflix and often hang with the same 5 people. I'm not rich. Instead, I often have wondered if buying groceries would overdraw my account. I want what that Instagram guy has, and because I don't have it, I felt both disappointment in myself and bitterness toward not only him, but also God. As I was talking this through with my therapist, Jeff, he encouraged me to look past this guy's pictures. He asked me if I truly believed his life was picture perfect with no problems, insecurities, or regrets. Immediately, I knew the answer to that question. Of course he didn't have a perfect life, not because I knew some secret about him, but because I know that life is hard and people are broken no matter how their Instagram feed might appear. I knew his life wasn't all that I had made it out to be, because every one of us is affected by living in a broken world. Most of us have a guy like this in our lives. Maybe it's someone you know, a friend, a brother, or even, dare I say it, a pastor. But whoever they are, these guys are still just humans. So often when we look at them, we see what appears to be a flawless life in comparison to our inconsistent, messy reality. It can cause us to grow bitter and hide our own humanity for fear of not measuring up. But the reality is, no matter how good someone looks, we all taste the bitter twinge of a real and broken world. We're all affected no matter how polished our outside persona may look. Far too often we hear the devastating news that another successful star or well-loved leader has died by suicide. And sometimes it hits even closer to home when someone we know and cherish, someone who loves God, loses the battle that many of us had no idea was raging inside of them. It has been found that comedians have some of the highest rates of depression of all artists. At first, that seems strangely sad and ironic, but at second glance, I see perhaps why that is. Comedians' very job is to make others laugh and smile, and to make palatable the difficult truths of this world, perhaps dull and sharp sting of reality, into something we can laugh at for an hour. But really, we all do the same thing when we show the world only our best selves. We use jokes, jobs, or social media captions to lighten, hide, and disguise the very real and deep pain we feel. And the sad thing is, choosing to escape from this reality and hiding our true selves hurts not only us but others too. It isolates us and causes loneliness, as we think we are the only ones who aren't picture perfect. But then someone like Rich comes along and bravely reveals not only the beautiful but also the broken parts of humanity. They reach into our hearts and remind us we're not alone. How many times have we heard the trope about men not asking for directions for fear of looking incompetent? The reality is we are all lost in one way or another, and we all need directions, both in our cars and in our lives. One of the biggest hurdles is embracing authenticity. We have voices in our minds that tell us real men don't have weaknesses, problems, or brokenness. And if they do, they don't talk about it or acknowledge it. They figure things out on their own. Keep calm and carry on. The reality is every man you know is scared, insecure, and human. We must go beyond the facade culture presents, the movie stars, magazine covers, and social media figures that leave us feeling like we need to look strong and put together all the time, that we are the only ones struggling, and that we must hide parts of who we really are. If we are to be truly strong, healthy, integrated, and connected men, we must begin by being honest about who we are, all of who we are, and look at ourselves not with shame but grace, the same grace we extend to others. The same grace God offers all of us, knowing how much we need it. The grace we receive only when we are brave enough to acknowledge we need it. Questions for reflection. Number 1. What effect do you think this inauthentic world has on us? Number 2. Do you feel the need to hide parts of yourself? If so, which ones? Number 3. Who do you find yourself envious of and why? When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. But when you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father, who sees everything, will reward you. Matthew 6, 5-6. A prayer for the authentic. O God, I acknowledge you are the one who knows my innermost being, the one who created me, and the one who knows me inside and out. It is you alone who knows my motivations, dreams, thoughts, fears, and feelings. From you I can hide no part of myself. Thank you that while knowing me fully, you love me fully, and because of your great love, I do not need to hide. I can be honest with myself, others, and most important, you, about who I really am. It is then that I can begin to discover who you created me to be. I pray that you would help me live an authentic life and not hide behind the masks I am so accustomed to, knowing my acceptance, freedom, forgiveness, and identity have already been spoken by you. Amen. So that is the end of the chapter. I hope that you can find it in yourself to be the true you around most of the people you spend your time with. When the author asks, what effect do you think this inauthentic world has on us? I think it has a big effect on us, for both men and women. There is a certain image we have of a man, and there is a certain image we have of a woman that are supposed to be perfect. And we have to realize no one is perfect. No one. Try not to hide yourself. Really try to open up, especially with your true friends. And try not to be envious of others. Because, really, we each have our own problems. You may not see them, but everyone has their own problems. And if you really just turn to God and also to your loved ones, I'm sure that you will find the authentic self that God really wants you to be. I hope you have a great week and see you next time.